Hello, welcome to honest-wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm a little bit sick today, so if there's some coughing and some other elements through the stream, or I feel a little low energy, understand it's because I have a flu at the moment or some sort of cold. Anyway, it's Friday. It's around 11 a.m., which is when I go live Monday through to Friday, and I'm with the Twitch chat, who I love hanging out with Monday through to Friday. We discuss all sorts of things. Specifically, we mainly review Rangers movies now. That's mainly what we are. But sometimes we do Warhammer content. Now, if you kept track with the latest news, you'll see that Games Workshop have released their first video and article. Not their first Meta Watch article, because we all remember the famous Meat Watch articles. More on that in a little moment. But they have released their first, what we could say, professional Meta Watch article, and I'm going to be talking about it today, specifically because it covers Age of Sigmar, and specifically because it's very similar to content I create, which is great. And I'm going to talk about it in detail. I'm going to talk about how it started, get into a little history, keep you caught up, and what my thoughts and feelings are on the fact that it exists and how they're going about it. There we go. Okay, that's the intro. Okay, click through if you want to skip the next bit. Okay, let's start with history. Let's start with the history of stats. Okay, so obviously people have done stats in war games for a while. But specifically in Warhammer, they were fairly new. Shout out for 40k to Pete the Falcone, who produced a bunch of the early 8th edition Warhammer 40k stats. And that was actually after LLV. So he's a Sheffield boy. But lives in Canada in the Northern Waste, so he had a lot of time on his hands. Watched my show, and I was like, I really wish we knew what the win rates for some of these armies were. And one of the reasons that we wanted to know that, because at that time, Age of Sigmar was pretty ridiculous. Some things to talk about real quickly. At the time, there was this thing called Vanguard Wing, which was Stormcast Eternal Army, which allowed you to deep strike 60 wounds on a 2-up armor save that re-rolled into combat. Imagine teleporting a unit, not outside of 9, not outside of 3, into combat, interlaced into your army, and then 30 wounds on a 2-up rerollable save, and then teleport that unit out and teleport a new unit in every turn. And then there were people being like, I'm really good at Warhammer. And I was like, nah, are you? Thanks to Tom and somebody at Painting for donating 1,000 bits to the show. And so the veracity of how good an army is versus skill expression. Those are two things that are always very, very important when you're talking about tournament gaming. Again, tournament gaming is a wonderful thing full of really wonderful people. A group of people getting together to express their love and interest in a hobby. Some people are not trying to win the event, let's say, and are there just to have some beers and play with their favourite army. Some people understand the entire nuance and mechanics of not only the entire game system, so they have something called system mastery, or they have a good level of system mastery, versus they understand how their armies work. Some people vary between all of those things. And those skill expressions on the tabletop is the thing that I've always been personally interested in. That's why when working for Games Workshop, having already been a tournament gamer myself, I set up live streaming tournaments for Games Workshop, because doing that meant that we would actually be able to see people play Warhammer well. Battle reports are where we get to watch people play Warhammer, okay. And that's not their fault. That's because battle reports are intrinsically incredibly hard to do. Because if you ask yourself, could you play one army well at a tournament or on TV, your answer would probably be like, maybe. If I asked you to do 22 armies over the course of the next few months, you'd be like, it's next to impossible. And of course it is, because it just is. I don't think there's anyone who can play those armies that well all the time. So they make mistakes, which is why you see the YouTube comments where they made this mistake, they made that mistake. It's just not fair, right? So what I thought was, we'll take tournament wargamers, we'll stream them, and we'll put them out. Okay, because skill expression is great, okay? But skill expression with armies that are too good kind of doesn't feel particularly strong, which is why anecdotally, the thing that we set up, anecdotes for this army's too strong or this army's too weak, was pretty much how Warhammer was done business-wise about, where were we at, 5 years ago. Roughly about there. And that's incredibly modern. This esports already existed. Regular sports already existed. Stats were a thing. The Warhammer community, i.e. the gaming community, and specifically people who don't really play, the gaming community is kind of always trundled along on its own, not really paying attention to a bunch of stuff. But like it was anecdotal. They're like, "Oh, this is too strong," and they're like, "You're just saying that because you're not as good as me." And I'm like, "Well, deploying 30 dudes into your terrain, into my army, doesn't actually feel that good, or you're that good at Warhammer." Anyway, so then LLV came along and was like, "Don't worry, Rob, I'll help you put this information together." And I was like, "That's great." So there's a bunch of tournament results that we put together, and we put together the first early Age of Sigmar stats. Now, they weren't super pretty. They were in some Excel spreadsheets, like, they were classic kind of like nerd stuff. But it gave us some real good indication on how armies were performing, how players were performing, and how the meta was developing. It was great, okay? Real obvious stuff. The obvious bit that maybe some of you aren't aware of, and why maybe even to this day the Honest Wargamer and the Honest Wargamer fandom is fairly protective of the stats, is because the lashback was incredible. Like the fury, like from like some tournament gamers, but also and a lot of tournament gamers who were very much embedded with Games Workshop at the time. So you had like what we would now deem their influencers. So they had like a group of playtesters and other people who were incredibly negative on the stats. All the DMs flew. People were screaming at people. People were blocking people. It was pretty insane as a reaction. And also pretty mentally jarring. Like, let's be honest. I think over the past 5 or 6 years, I've become like a little bit more attuned to being able to just be like, do you know what? They've just got a bad opinion. Doesn't matter. Doesn't bother me. But at the time, it was actually pretty withering to have many community leaders, and I mean many community leaders, outright hostile to aggressive towards the stats and the stats creation and what they really said about the state of the game. And also Games Workshop. That's also really important to note. And also Games Workshop. Most of these people either had a direct relation with Games Workshop or a direct relationship with Games Workshop, or were they were effectively talking for Games Workshop. They were Games Workshop's mouthpieces, effectively, because they got some free books, which is a pretty low bar to set for your integrity, but that's a snide comment I didn't need to make, but I made anyway because I never really had much respect for them. These people to this day have me blocked, or are rude about the stuff that we proceeded to create. Anyway, we trundled along, and the stats were pretty. The stats were pretty horrific. I'm not gonna lie. We had that army that I talked to you about, where it did the deploy into your army. It existed for 9 months in the game. 9 months. Which was pretty wild. Then you had some follow-up stuff. You had like Daughters of Cain, who for several months, and I think thinking back, I might not be exactly accurate, but like 4 to 5 months were at a near 80% win rate. Yeah, they had at least over a 70% win rate, but it was in the high 70s, and it was for a significant amount of time. I remember now, even today, that it was only 2 to 3% of the meta. So it's specifically good players playing with this army. This army was next to unbeatable at the time. Then we moved into a bunch of like really high spiked armies like Skaven, Flesh-Eater Courts, also Tzeentch as well. And then you follow up with Slaanesh. And Slaanesh was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in a lot of ways, because after this, we'd been doing Warhammer coverage, like both live streaming events at the weekend, but also following the stats for a significant amount of time. Now it's at this point when you get the casual or it's not really meant to be a competitive game. Apart from now, we get to go back into the journey a little bit. I know this is going to sound like a lot of pretext before we talk about the MetaWatch article. I get it, so feel free to skip ahead. But I think all of this is important before I discuss the MetaWatch article, because there's been no one else more intimately involved in doing the stats or being a part of the stats. Sorry, being a part of the stats is a better way to describe my role, as opposed to doing the stats, which very predominantly now for the past few years has been Rob and Ziggy, but I'm going to touch on those in a bit because those are wonderful people. But it's important context, and I think it's super worth talking about. Okay, where was I? The win rates, the straw that broke the camel's back. Games Workshop, the casual players. There we go. The people like, it's not meant to be a competitive game. Okay, so when I worked internally for Games Workshop was when they released their very first GHB, or General's Handbook. If you don't know what that is, that was at the time a yearly book where they would talk about, they would be like, this is how you're going to play Age of Sigmar this year. It's got open play, if you want to do open play. It's got narrative play stuff, and it's got match play rules. Okay, so that was directly Games Workshop recognizing that match play was there was something that they were selling and something that was a part of what they produced. They intended for the audience to play match play stuff, and they also released tournament battle packs with it. So you're intending to play this. So when anyone says that it's not meant to be played as a competitive game, Games Workshop literally have sold it like that for the entire of Age of Sigmar's existence, apart from, and this is important, apart from the very beginning of Age of Sigmar. Okay, let's cycle back. Rob, we're going deep into the history here. We are, but it's important. Okay, when Age of Sigmar was first released, some people may not know, it had no points. There were no points. There was no system to build the army at all. None of those ways. Like you couldn't. You just basically turned up with some stuff and you put some stuff down. That was it. Okay, and obviously it was insane. Now, importantly, when I went to work for Games Workshop, or one of the reasons they hired me, because I was a tournament gamer who'd done a lot of social media marketing, and the reason that they hired me was because I was able to communicate and understand how gaming maybe should be related to an audience. Okay, loads of other reasons. A manager fancied me, but those are side notes for deep dives another time. Now, the important part is that it was a flop. It was ridiculous. It didn't nearly destroy the company, but it was a disaster. A disaster so much so, and if you'd like to go back and look, that a man called Alan Merritt, the genius behind this move, got golden handshaked out the business. They were like, you need to get lost, off you go. Created the marketing team. So in some ways, the flop of Age of Sigmar upon release was actually really excellent for us as wargamers, because it's produced where we're at now, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is in a fantastic place. We're a day after the Leagues of Votan apology from Games Workshop, which again, as a community, because I'm a community member, is great, but we'll talk more about that as well. The important part is it was a flop, a disaster, and because of that, they were like, we need to rescue this thing. We've invested loads of money, we've invested loads of time, we don't know what to do. What the fuck do we do? So they created a marketing department, which they'd never done. Like, they didn't have one. So then they were like, right, here's a marketing department. We need to get this going. And some of their early stuff was really pushing Age of Sigmar, because they were like, this thing was a fucking disaster. It had great success early because what they did was they introduced points, okay, for their units, army construction, and they made a battle pack. Now, Age of Sigmar was already being made competitively because of a person called Mo Ashraf. He made something called MoComp, and people were playing a lot of really popular game systems based around that. Okay, right, that's where we're at. So, I'm in a marketing meeting, and they're talking about the numbers, okay? GHB's just come out, massive spike in sales. So the marketing manager at the time, some other guy, I can't remember his name, he was like, it was a big meeting, like loads of people in there, big deal. Loads of people were like, oh, it's going really well. Like, I think this video we made did this, and this other thing did this, right? And all these other things. And I said, but we can clearly see that marketing towards tournament gamers was incredibly important and upticked our sales. Creating a tournament game with these miniatures so that people could play was incredibly important and did spike these sales. That's 100% a fact, correct? And the answer was yes. He was like, yes, that's correct. The GHB has been a direct effect. And he was like, and it's the most significant, this is important, he said it was the most significant direct effect. So it wasn't the social media marketing, it wasn't anything else, it was the deployment of being able to play the game as a tournament game. That's direct from inside Games Workshop, inside the marketing meeting, in a time when, and you have your two cases. You have did not do that and had that, did not do that, tank, did that, rise. Tournament gaming is incredibly healthy for wargaming wholesale. I feel that needs to be said, okay? Because there are some people who they think it's bad for the hobby, and I'm like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just a ridiculous statement. People coming together, having fun, enjoying what they do. It's insane. Anyway, okay, so back to the stats. We did the stats, and then we're at Slaanesh. Straw that broke the camel's back. 6 months of a 70% win rate army. That's an incredible amount of time. You buy tickets for your tournament, whatever. Oh, okay, Rob, if that's true, why wasn't just everyone playing Slaanesh? Because even though you play at a tournament, why doesn't everyone support Man U? I don't really know who the good football team is. You support your team. You'd like it so that your team be that Grots, be that Flesh Eater course, whatever, that your team does well. It's important to note that like you want to play with the things you want to play with, and you want to have a fair shot at a game. That seems really, really relevant, okay? And that's never really been true. Like, you've been able to buy some stuff and do okay, but normally, whenever a book comes out during a season, depending on points levels and other stuff, there's like an archetype that does really well. So at that point, I said something along the lines of we should ban Slaanesh online, and again, the bullies came out, shouting, screaming, raging. And I don't really see why, and I still to this day don't see why, and that mainly because, like, they were just making other people not have fun. Like it's a tournament, sure, right? But it's a tournament that's meant to be fun. I reckon the people that play any competitive game to a certain level are at least enjoying themselves, right? But it was a very weird time. Anyway, COVID came around, and so kind of like everything fell apart because tournaments fell apart. Then at that point, in steps Ziggy, super babe, love that guy, and he created the stats as we see them now in the very, very presentable fashion. In fact, let's just take a moment to look at how they look, so you guys can. Oh, I don't know where my mouse is. You can see here. So lovely, right? And we've got all sorts of stuff. We've got win rate and battle plans. So we used to only do win rates, and then we're now taking into account what battle plans are played. The Prize of Galette is played the most, as an example. Then we can look at faction tournament meta representation. Yeah, and we can see that was always one that I really liked, because if you go to a tournament, you're most likely to play against Stormcast Eternals, Sylvaneth, Nighthaunt, Daughters of Cain, and Skaven at the moment, as an example, right? Depending on your local meta. And that also breaks down into, if you want to, which country. So that while that's true here, if we go to Canada, you're most likely to play against Nighthaunt, right? Okay, so it becomes really interesting. Okay, and then we get to like win rates over time, which is again fantastic. Again, all new stuff, and all of this is powered by Rob, not me, different Rob, better Rob Hull. So Warhammer Rob, and Rob does all of the input in for this and produces all this, and then Ziggy front ends it and makes it look like the treasure that it is, and it's all incredible stuff. This is something I created, the positive win rate potential. I want to see how likely you were to do well with an army. Now the important part is, and we'll reflect on this a lot later, is in the early days I was very much pushing for the game to at least have just between a 40 and 60% win rate. Every army in between those two. That's what I needed, right? Like, and then as time has gone on, in the past couple of years, I started to crunch those numbers again and be like 45% to 55%. So if anything was over, we could again scream. Because at one point we were kind of okay with 62% win rate stuff, and then I was like, right. So it's kind of interesting. We started out like 78% is where we're really like screaming. Then we pulled it to 60, and now we're pulling it between 55 and 60%. And that's really incredible. That's really incredible, because we can see as a community, because this isn't just me, this is a bunch of people I already mentioned, so LLV, Ziggy, and Rob, and everyone else who's contributed. Yeah, that's me. But it's also all of the tournament gamers, all of the people that have advocated for making the stats be relevant to us, have more enjoyable tournament experiences. It's everyone. As a community, we've crunched these. We've brought these down. We've created this environment, which has been fantastic. Us, have made this better. There have been things we've just ignored, scenery rules that we just outright ignored at events before. Like, it's really good. There's so much good stuff that we as a community have helped produce. At the same time, we've been able to even see that armies have underperformed and even create events so that underperforming armies can just go and play at events together, or people have given more points to armies to go play at these events. I don't 100% agree with that, because I think Games Workshop themselves should sort that out, but there we go. Okay, so we're in a great place where we've got community-driven stats by the community, right, which help us understand what's good and what's better. Then we can go over to Mark. Oh, one last thing, sorry, I needed to talk out. So this is something really, this is Mark who did this. So one of the other really cool things, if you go and look at it, first turn choice stats is fantastic, obviously. And then faction, I always like this, the faction, how the sub-factions do versus other sub-factions. Example, Sons of Behemoth, Breaker Tribe is the most popular one, but Stomper Tribe's the most successful in tournaments, etc. And then we've got faction review matchups. We've got just so much data, which is just good. Then we got head-to-heads, how two different armies do, which battle plans they do better on. And I'm almost certain if you go look at AOS Worlds, you'll be able to see like all of the teams will have used this to determine like what they want to pick in and what they want to put in their teams and what they don't want to put in their teams. This is T-Whip. Again, that was created by the 40k community and put in together. There are 20 pages of data. Like, there's a lot, right? Is important, and it's all free and publicly available. Like, it's all free with the methodology behind it, all available for free online. Okay. And then this is a really cool thing. If you go and look at an army, and so this is Mark who passed all this data together. So if we go and look at so the most popular army is Stormcast Eternals. Here you go. Or is this updated currently? I think it should be. Oh, no, maybe it's not. I think I've messed this up. Either way, over on the right-hand side. Oh, there we go. It's on that side. Idiot. So as you can see, I've picked Stormcast Eternals, and as you can see, Vindicators are the most chosen unit in tournament play. Liberators, Stormdrake Guard, Dracothian Guard, and you get down to here immediately, like units never picked, Evocators. And then if there's something not on this list, it means it's just never seen play in competitive play. And this is talking about internal balance. Okay, and this is a great thing that we've only recently, thanks to work from Mark, actually even been able to have a conversation about, because I've been fairly. Like, I've really wanted internal balance to be really strong, but I've really been pushing for at least the external balance to be good, and then you can start messing with the internal balance. And internal balance is which units inside the book aren't as good as the other units, okay? So that's where we're at. So we were already in a good place. See my video a few weeks ago, about Age of Sigmar being in a good place, and then you can look at internal balance, right? And you can be like, right, okay, you never get to see these units in game. Like, what's wrong with this unit? Why is it bad? Why does it not work well? Why isn't the Slangor War Scroll good? Okay, really great stuff. Okay. So then Games Workshop yesterday released Meta Watch. Okay. All right. So next up, let's have a little bit of a chat about the Meta Watch story, shall we? Before we get into this. Okay, so Meta Watch story. Games Workshop, during COVID, maybe, I can't remember when, maybe just after, started to create a bunch of Meta Watch articles. And they were effectively, and I think this is a fair review, they were effectively like fluff pieces that were at best, very optimistic views of the game state, cherry picking information that really helped tell a story that was for them. To just outright lies. And then one little bit of a relationship that they had with the Honest Wargamer crew and the T-Sport Stats Center specifically is the last time we saw a Meta Watch article. In fact, maybe the last time we saw a Meta Watch article at all, maybe, which was a bit of a disaster for them, was they had someone fronting a set of stats, which they had directly ripped from the stat source that you see in there. And again, we have no problem with Games Workshop using the stats from the T-Sport Stats Center and the Honest Wargamer. Like, it's fine. Like, it's great because it helps the community. That's fantastic. But they had credited us, and then they decided to take the credit off, which is, I mean, pretty shit. Like, let's be honest. Okay? Right? Pretty shit. Right, as well as like some pretty poor communications from them as a company. Okay, like, we took our time to take the piss out of them. That's fine. Yeah, we went through that journey. That's good. And now we're at their first installment of a new Meta Watch article. And straight out of the bat, I'm going to say I'm incredibly happy to see what this is now. Okay, I'm going to say that, like, I'm going to say straight off the bat, if you've bothered to listen to that entire pre-story, as much as I think this is done in good faith and is great, and I'm a big fan, probably not going to take my my foot off the pedal in expecting a company whose interest is making money to 100% always be on a level with us as a community. Yeah. Now, I think that this is actually really on the level, and I think they're being really upfront, and I really like it, and it's very transparent, and I'm great about it. But I would always like to just be like, let me just check that myself. I would always like to just be there as a community, if that makes sense. That seems fair, right? That seems fair. We made it, boys. We got to the article. I'm sorry. How long did that take? Long time. That took a long time. I apologize. I apologize directly. I'll just put a little what's it called, a timestamp in on this one. Was that too long? 69 hours. Okay, I apologize. Right, I think that was fair summation for anyone who's new. You got it doesn't matter, whatever. Anyway, so share a moment with us, Rob. I will. That's fine. Oh, you can do that in Twitch. We'll not do that right now. I'll do it after. Anyway, so as much as I'm like super pro, I've read all through this already, and we're going to go through it in detail now. I actually personally think that as a community we should obviously not let corporate overlords who haven't had the best relationship, because I don't know if there's been no communication with, like, we still haven't had a sorry for not crediting us, right? And in fact, they didn't in this MetaWatch article even discuss the fact that this has already been done as a community, but it doesn't matter. Like, that's not important. The important part is I don't trust them, but I like what they're doing, and that seems fine, because they haven't given me a reason to trust them, like, because they've been dishonest in the past, but I'm really a big fan of what they're doing, okay? Those two things can be true at the same time. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's have a look at the info. Okay. So MetaWatch. Let's go. 2 sorries in a week would be a stretch. I agree. Okay. So welcome to our new Age of Sigmar MetaWatch series, in which Warhammer Age of Sigmar design team shares insights and analysis on the current state of competitive play. Here on the Warhammer Age of Sigmar team, we're huge fans of matched play. Okay. Each Monday, various team members will arrive at the studio ready to share the tales of conquest or defeat from the weekend tournament they attended before we all examine the updated data from the edges around the world. What? I actually haven't read that bit. They're literally going to do my show. Okay, I hadn't read that bit. That's the bit I hadn't read. I hadn't read that bit. That bit's... Okay, so if you don't know, every Monday I do a stat show where I, and to quote this article directly, examine the updated data from around the world. I think that's even how I say it. We're just going to pick a random time, say 11 a.m. Okay, it is fascinating watching factions rise to fall with shifts in the meta as players learn how best to wield their favourite faction, discover combos, and build counters to new threats. One of our most important tenets is mastery through defeat. Players should always feel that they can learn and improve from each of their games, and should come away with new strategies and adjustments to their army roster. This is why game balance is so important to us. As an asymmetric game like this, any perception of inherent advantage for one side can interfere with your ability and learn to grow from experience. Did you just quote as their source? Yes. I can't. Okay, this is fresh. I went into this all really enthusiastic. I need you to know that. Super enthusiastic. But now I know that they're absolutely ripping me off. I'm a little bit upset. Like, I'm a little bit jaded, because I'm a bit like, just do something else. But I guess I'm just wildly good at what I do. And, of course, you're going to want to be like me. Like, that's fair. Like, they just want to be me. They want to be me in the chat. That's okay. Listen, if you're listening, James Rose, if you're listening, crew, I get it. I'm hilarious. Like, that's so cute, man. Just do it. That's so sweet. Like, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I agree. Like, I think it's cute, right? Like, let's go. One of our most important tenets is mastery. This is why the game balance is so important to us. In this article, we'll touch on the following. How we gather data to inform our design decisions. The core terminology we will refer to in this series. Yeah. Our current balance goals for the game. And snapshot of the current faction standings, see where we see those goals. Okay. In this article, we'll touch on the following. Understandable why one would be jealous. Thank you. A Magic Games Workshop stat show with zero banter. That one. It's true. I shouldn't have done painting tutorials. Our analytics pipeline currently brings in all data from official Games Workshop events that are run around the world. As well, right? So that's like 3, right? I love this bit. So they do this in the video as well. We'll talk on this in a bit. They're like, yeah, we bring it in from all of our like 8 Warhammer events we have a year officially. as well as the Warhammer Age of Sigmar games recorded in 2 popular community-run events tools. Like, that's also like a slight straight away on the independent community. Like, your game exists because of the independent community. Like, I get that this thing is good, but just, like, know your place. Like, absolutely know your place. You're stepping on the shoulders of giants. Mo is a giant. Like, you're stepping on other people's fucking shoulders. You should at least say thank you. Like, that's rude. Like, that statement's rude, and I don't like it, but anyway, we have more than 35,000 individual games recorded in our database, captured from more than 1,700 events. Okay, so a little bit on... there's been loads of Honest Wargamer stands being like, where do you get this data from? And it's completely fair to be like, where the hell did you get the data from? Because last time we know they stole our data, okay? Right, or co-opted our data. That's a better way of saying it. That seems fair, right? That seems fair. But my love to all of you, like, I know for a fact that they've been directly taking this from BCP and TTO. Like, they've got, no, it's not called an RSS feed, because that's just for podcasts and stuff. It's called something else. API. They've got an API set up, right? And someone on the back end is taking all the data, which, without really talking about who and what I know, like, I know that that's something that we could have set up previously in the past, but instead, to make sure we confirm some data validity, especially on certain ends, we decided to not, because actually there's a bunch of other information that we want to gather, right? So there you go. They also take data from one-day events. Now, if it was me, okay, if it was me, I would only want information from Sunday events. Why, Rob? Why do you only want information from Sunday events? Well, because just any noob can get together on a one-day event and, like, just butt heads with someone else. And I guess low skill expression wins are as interesting as high skill expression wins, but I'm only interested in high skill expression gaming. I don't really because we talk a lot about how armies are played, right? An army is either piloted or it's driven, yeah? It either drives you or you pilot it, right, basically. And some armies do what they do and you're just along for the ride. Gargants are a good example. Yeah, but some armies you pilot, right? And then the difference between low skill expression and high skill expression is really that you're able to pilot armies well, right? So you can hey Rob, this is for the narrative games gamers, not normal people. That's also true. Anyway, and also I don't think one day events are relevant. Like, and Ziggy's actually, you can put one day events in the stats as well. There's a one day event button somewhere which also shows you all the one day event stuff. But there we go. There's a massive difference between stats from the top in most games. Yes. Okay. Anyway, it's important to note this data is imperfect as we're relying on community-generated data, while certain events track our present data in unusual ways. Fortunately, given how low rate of errors relative to the size of the broadest data set, these generally have minimal impact on broader trends. Okay. And then there's a video. We'll watch the video at the end. Okay. That's important. A shout out to all my low skill expression bros. Anyway, when we're discussing, I can't believe they're doing my show. Oh my god, I am brilliant. How good am I? Oh, like, you've got to at least say that I'm brilliant. And it must be so threatening that I do a thing that they feel like they must take over the thing that I do. That is amazing. Like, feel free to follow my Patreon and support me more. That's great. You should sue them. Brilliant and humble. Allow me a moment. Allow me a moment to be happy with myself, right? Although, anyway, when we're discussing game balance, things tend to boil down into 2 main categories. External balance measures the relative performance. I mean, watch any of my videos, you can understand this. I don't need to explain this again, as I've explained in many videos in the past, as a writer of this article may have watched. There are a number of metrics we monitor for both internal and external balance. That's bullshit. Like, you've started to balance. You've started to watch. No, they've looked at no stats previously, right? Like, it didn't exist. It was just one guy who was like, oh, I reckon this is good. And that was it. That's how they did data balancing before. Right, win rate is one of the key metrics for both internal... Oh, don't need that. Right, inclusion rate. Okay, so that's meta-representation win rate. Okay, so just stuff you find on our stats. Right, finally, margin of error is statistic expression. So this is bullshit, right? This is margin of error. Okay, this is some bullshit that this is important to kind of talk about. So in the video and in this, They talk about margin of error. Let's go through it, and then I'll explain why. Finally, margin of error is a statistic expressing the amount of random sampling error in the results in our data set. In the simplest terms, the more we split up a particular data set, the noisier and less reliable the data will get. We focus on a 60-day rolling average, which provides enough data to reduce the margin of error to 5% across all factions. This is still a significant margin. It's entirely possible that a handful of skilled generals perform particularly well at an event, nudging the average win rate up for a faction for a couple of percentage points. This makes it especially important not to panic or overreact, but rather be patient. This is the bit why I don't trust them, and they do the same thing in the video as well. So one of the things that I've always talked about is that the win rates for the army should settle between 45 and 55%. Yeah, this isn't because I want there to be a 5% error, right? And that's how they're going to try and co-opt the conversation. I really do think. I don't want there to be a 5% like oh, there's some statistical error. That isn't true at all. And instead, actually, I just want the win rates between those. So what they're effectively saying is, sure, Hedonites and Sinestra at a 45% win rate, but actually that's a statistical error, and they're actually at a 50% win rate. So Cruel Boys aren't at a 39% win rate, and there's statistical error up 5%. Similarly, Sons of Behemoth. So it's their way of saying that there's the 5% up and down. So it's like, oh, it's not as bad as it seems, because actually it's 5% up, 5% down. Does that make sense? And then they've co-opted the conversation I've been having about that. And of course they're co-opting the conversation. You can't be like, Rob, you're being egotistical. They're literally recreating my show Monday morning. Like, okay. They've said they want a 48 to 52% win rate, which will be hard to get. I agree. This is not how statistics works, Games Workshop. There's also that, right? This is still a sample. You have to be talking about statistical margins of errors to be serious, correct? This also means Snesh could be 40%. Correct, but they're never going to pitch it like that, right? But 45% win rate could be 40% by their definition. It could, but they're never going to sell it as that, right? Of course, the error in the unreleased data set that they have, right, is always going to be like, well, we've looked at it and our error says it's up, not down, right? Right. Anyway, our goals. Okay. Now we've introduced the framework. So external balance. The average win rate for each faction should be between 45 and 55%. Agreed. If every faction has a 50% win rate, a 5% margin of error produces the results in this range. There you go. There's the lie. Okay. There's the lie. That's how they're trying to fuck you. Okay. Take over the stats and then fuck you. Okay. Right. We monitor external balance at various levels by battle tomes or at war clans, blah, 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 blah. Internal balance. This is explaining the stats, which we all do, right? Now, the universal options one is great. Love this, right? This is not a lie. That's how stats work. It is a lie because they're liars because of all the lying they've done in the past. Like, this is how it works. If someone's a liar and they repeat lies to you, eventually you're like, well, you're a liar, and you must prove that you're not a liar. So I want not only this, I want all of the Excel sheets, I want all of the working out, and I want the proof that you're not a liar. Because I'm not just taking them at their word because they've lied in the past. That isn't how things work. Be an adult, right? That's why you end up with governments the way that we have them right now. They lie and they lie and they're like, maybe they won't lie this time. Stop being a child. Be an adult human being, right? Right, it's good. Right, games would simply be like, no, this should be 5% higher. Players are just having a skill issue. Anyway, again, important to note, I'm really pro all of this, okay? Important to note. This list comes in priority order. There's a reason, there's a list of reasons I'm excited about this. Number one, it's great. Yeah, it's great that they're here and communicating about it. It's great, okay? But don't come in here and be like, it's a completely new day, they're perfect now. This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous way to live. Anyway, this is really exciting, universal options, because I'm very excited about this. Universal war scrolls such as endless spells and universal enhancements such as arcane tome should be used in less than 10% of army rosters. They are useful tools and helpful level the playing field, but we want a stronger focus on what makes each faction especially unique, which is let's go, which is great. No more arcane tome, no more master magic, let's go. So they should be nerfed to shit. Now this is also going to be I can't tell you how excited I am about this, because this is rope which they have to wear, right? They're like, this is the same way as Games Workshop saying, sorry, they have to own this. Like, they've said, we understand that this is too good. So we have to change this massively, right? like this is perfect, because then we get so much good stuff. You like, if you look at the recent Tzeentch battle tome, you're like, well, most of these command traits suck ass. Like, these artifacts don't work very well. Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to nerf Master of Magic. We're going to nerf something else. Now you've got to take something else. Like, okay, well, in every single Tzeentch book, you're going to take Archdemagogue as a command trait, pretty much. Okay. Okay, so, like, we're going to nerf it, okay? But then everything else is also a bad choice. So are you going to make those better? Are you going to do the work? Like, this is amazing stuff for us as a community. We end up with better options, more stuff to play with. Like, I can't tell you how excited I am about this, because they have to wear it. Like, they've been like, we're going to own this, and that's amazing. Like, because then we get, like, we as a community get like this amazing game system, which is already a good game system. Like, that's the best bit. Like, it's great. Like, I can't be more, like, excited about it. And if they don't do it, then this has to be full of bullshit. So they either have to be really upfront and on the nose and explain stuff to us honestly, yeah, and then they have to be like, yeah, we fucked that up.
We're sorry, we didn't get it right this time.
Which is great, yeah. Right? Or we, or they just lie. The other option is just lie, of course. The other option is lie. If you think, right, question is how quick physical books be out of date? Immediately, of course. Because, like, Rob with the cool Norway hoodie. Thank you. Anyway, then they got our win rates, and their win rates is slightly different to our win rates, but they take in one-day events, and our win rates currently aren't being updated. I think they're being updated tomorrow. Some interesting stuff in there. So this is stuff that's too good, defined as over 55%. Like, I don't really have much to say about most of this, to be honest. I already said that Nurgle Suns, this Tzeentch one's aberrant. It really is. This is just like one day, like, gazumpings, which don't really count, in my personal opinion. Although I do think Tzeentch is a good book, but it's slower, basically. And then all the low stuff makes a lot of sense. OCR, Green Spike, Cruel Boys. Save to Darkness is a great army. That 41% win rate isn't representative. We know loads of people. Toby, for example. Tom as well, I think. Was Tom actually playing the army? But Jeffrey Missouri has also obviously pushed. And also Toby from... wait, did Enwald as well? Like, from Germany? Like, we've seen Kotet go 5-0 like 5 times. So... like, that's where we get into the next interesting part, right? Okay, the excuses come out for the army you play. I don't know what to tell you, right? It's why you also need 5041 stats to see how armies going to bits of meta correct. That's also very important as well. Beast Camera, like, I don't care about their similarly certain dominant war scrolls. Okay, so now this is the other part as well. So the other really exciting thing is obviously they're looking at internal representation, and this is incredibly exciting because while they could potentially make Puskill Blight Lords like more expensive points wise, like 220 to 250 as an example, just picking it out of a hat, right? What they could also do, they'd be like, why the hell is no one taking Unit X? Although almost all of the units inside Nurgle see play, TBH. A better example, I guess, would be Stormcast, or Cities of Sigmar, where we know that there are tons of trash units in City of Sigmar, like just trash, and they never see play other than because they're trash. So then, but we know that if we go and look at our stats here, hold on. If we go and look at the unit stats, wherever the unit stats are. So if we look at Stormcast Eternals, you can see, oh no, but Cities of Sigmar is the one I was just talking about. If we look at Cities of Sigmar, that Battle Mage is 10% of all lists, and that's also including allied lists as well. Like, that doesn't include allied lists, which is in every Sylvaneth list and a bunch of other lists as well. And then it scrolls down, but like, there's a ton of units in there that just don't have any representation at all. And the Honest Wargamer does believe representation is good in all walks of life. So more of that. That Steam Tank in 2% of the meta. Let's go. I can't believe the Steam Tank is at 2%. What are we talking about, ladies and gentlemen in the chat? Who is that? If you're the Steam Tank dude, get at me, right? Get at me. Steam Tank's in there. I can't believe he's even in there. That's fantastic. Love that. Anyway, Anyway, that's just me being excited. So this is good because then if they're looking at which units are too good, not only are they going to have the ability to affect the external balance. For instance, if you just made Puskil Blights loads more expensive, then maybe the army just drops down and isn't as effective. But the way that you balance that would be to also make those units that aren't performing as well maybe be a little bit better. Maybe you make plate bearers a little bit cheaper. Who knows, right? The big fear is they do the 10 points, 10 points. If you remember from Idneth Deepkin, when we had Idneth Deepkin sat at 6% win rate for like 2 years. And then they were like, right, okay. We're going to make Eels 10 points more expensive for 3, but we're going to drop Thralls down 10 points or one of the other units down by 10 points. And so basically the lists were exactly the same, right? It was just they moved the 10 points around, right? Which is not what you want. Okay. We'll use these articles to zoom in competitive meta for Age of Sigmar, touch upon internal balance, external balance between sub-factions and universal enhancements and core battalions. We're planning on supplementing the series with a new MetaWatch podcast, which will allow us to dive deeper into these topics. We're already planning on an episode to your questions, so please email them in. Topics can include specific data you're curious about or questions about our process, how we handle team or double events. Okay. Game balance is an iterative process. We're constantly working to improve methodologies. We feel like we're going through the right direction, but recognise we still have a ways to go. Warhammer Age of Sigmar team would like to extend a huge thank you to everyone who's contributed or running or playing events or submitted feedback. Okay, so anyway, just loads of fluff at the end. Okay, so first off, I'm very excited. Very excited they're doing my own show. I didn't know that, going in. Right, I'm very excited. I think this is great, because it shows a couple of things. Number one, Games Workshop or someone in Games Workshop has put the financial resources into arming these people into being able to do something that's positive for the community, which is great. The real feedback will be when we get the actual, War Scroll updates and we get the other stuff and we see how effective they are, right? And again, how effective they are is something that we should track, yeah? Not something we should let them tell us, okay? Seems a mistake to just let them tell us, okay? Now, I guess some people are going to be like, you're just jaded. But, I'm jaded because they, lied. I don't really, I know that sounds really, am I just meant to always just, let it go? It seems weird. It's a genuine moment where I would genuinely really love this thing that they do to be outright honest and for the health of the game. Because I think a more healthy, diverse game makes them more money. So for them, they should be orientated towards that. But for us as a community, it just makes us have a better game as well, which is really good. But also, I just can't trust them right now. And I feel that that's fair. Maybe some people are like, you're being over the top again. But if you didn't listen to the beginning of the show, it's been a journey. And it's been a pretty bad journey. I'm thrilled that we're here. I'm thrilled that it's having set up live streaming games for Games Workshop, doing all this early stuff and getting all that snapback. I think that this is great, and I think it's great for the community. I really do, but I just right now can't put my faith in them. Also, I don't necessarily have any faith in them continuing this. Again, not to be rude to the people producing it, but if we look at the past, they had a podcast called Stormcast, which then they didn't do anymore. Then they had the official Warhammer podcast, and they stopped doing that. They have a real tendency to have these pet projects, and then they fall by the wayside. Voxcast is another one. Thank you. All right. And then the other thing about it, and this is kind of important, is they don't treat their members of staff particularly well, in my opinion, as someone who's worked there, right? And then one of these things that's important is that the turnover, if a lot of this is becoming because of James is putting a lot of really solid work in, then I applaud James a lot. I think congratulations to you. You should be super proud of yourself, right? I think that's great. But if they don't treat him well, if he's just someone else made me a better offer, then who do they have as the talent? They only ever have talented individuals. They don't have a system for talent, right? If that makes sense. Okay. Oh, that was a really good interviews with artist designers. Real shame it stopped. Yeah, it did. We've been hurtful in this toxic relationship we have. Yeah, that's fair. And I think we're in a good place. There's going to be a lot of people who say that we're being negative. Those people are idiots. Like, and fuck them. Like they haven't lived our lives and they haven't lived our journey. So.
What's right on the bleeding edge of the tournament scene at the moment?
Oh, I love this guy. Like, I've already watched this, but we'll go through this in order. So this is James on the left. So this is our hope and savior. Someone put a little little crown on his head. Someone maybe give him a little Jesus shawl. This is our guy, right? This is our guy on the left, and this is our intro. And this guy is just a cutie. Right, he's just going for it. Like, you're in a corporate world, you got to be super corporate, but you're talking about something you like. I mean, that's fine. James has a death glare. He does have a death glare. Presenter is way too happy talking about.
Today's inaugural episode of Meta Watch, we'll be talking about all things.
Oh wait, is it Matt? Is it James Rose or Matt Rose? Matt Rose. James Rose is the 40k player. I'm sorry. Is this Matt? Matt Rose, yeah.
Data. So we'll be going through how we collect, track, and analyze data in order to help us refine the competitive.
This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy to come from Games Workshop. I'm going to say it again. Like, this is nuts that Games Workshop are putting this out as a product. I'm still reeling from the apology yesterday. I don't think you understand. Like, this is a bunch of boomers who, like, have been nepotistic, like, vile. Like, this is a crazy corporation full of the most insane shit, right? This is nuts that this exists, right? Like, this is great. Like, this is huge, right? Okay, I'm amazed they built the studio. Well, that's the same studio that they do the presenting from, right?
Competitive scene for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. And joining us is Matt. So, Matt, it's Meta Watch. What does Meta...
What does meta mean? Okay, really fucking bringing it to the schlubs. This is great. Also, I love this as a cursory, like, video. This is great, because this is only going to direct more people to my show, because I'm hilarious.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, meta in this context is referring to meta game. Mm-hmm. So if you think about a specific game like rock, paper, scissors, right? The rules of the game, I throw rock, paper beats rock, scissors beats paper, etc. Everyone knows how to play the game. If you think of a meta is looking at the strategic game on top of that. So imagine that in your local community, people always threw rock, right? Then the best way to counter that would be to throw paper.
Sure.
So you can adapt to what's happening in that meta. So you can have a very local meta of, maybe your gaming club, a lot of players are playing death armies, and, you need to find the right way to counter summoning units.
Sure.
Whereas at a broader tournament scene, you can look at kind of who's doing well in the meta right now and what you might want to bring to counter those lists.
That makes a lot of sense. So you've got to have an idea of what's happening in each scene.
No, that isn't how they do balance. It's how they previously did balance at their terms, so you can optimize yourself for the Google YouTube searches. Remember to keep looking at their terms. I mean, obviously, I put MetaWatch into my key search terms now. Also, can I analyze what keywords they put into their video? I swear to Jesus, if it says the Honest Wargamer in it, I'm gonna fucking. I will be rock hard. That's what I'll be.
And is that where some of this data that we're going to be talking about comes in?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we pull in data from events being held all around the world. So there's a lot of initiatives, either internal, so Games Workshop, we host a lot of events, but then there's also a lot of community initiatives.
No, you don't! Stop lying! You don't host loads of events! You host a couple of events, and then the community hosts so many fucking more events than you! Stop it! A lot of events. We've got 8 at Warhammer World this year, we've got 4 in America next year. We host a lot of 5 events. That's not true!
Initiatives to help track and collate data from all of the events that are played. So we pull in all of that data, and we look at it both at a global level as well as local.
I gotta say, big shout out, because he's obviously not English, American or Canadian. We didn't hear data, and I'm disappointed. I would have liked some data, but data's fine. That's fine.
Local metas in different countries around the world to keep track and make sure that the game is kind of as healthy and balanced as it can be.
You say that it's local and globally as well, and do you break them down between each one to inform how the games are? Because it's such a big piece, it's worldwide, isn't it, the whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. What we tend to look at a local level is what we call emerging metas. So in some cases, a specific region, say Australia, might be ahead of the curve where people start cottoning on.
They are not ahead of the curve. That's like, I love my Aussie bros, and you know it. Like, you know it. You know that that's fan service. Like, you got a bunch of Australians on board there. That's a good statement. That's a good, smart play. But come on, that was some straight up bullshit. Watch yourself.
To a particular kind of army build that does really, really well, or combination, right? The first people using Purple Sun in order, not for the damage effect, but for the rend effect, combining that with Caradron Overlords of the shooting heavy army,
Sure.
That list starts doing really well.
Yeah.
And then other people start
Sort of latch onto it.
latching onto that list and bringing it to events.
Go on, say netlist. Like, I absolutely fucking dare you to say netlist. Like, just come on, say the word. Like, they were clearly in a board meeting. They're like, what words don't we say?
And so that becomes a new emerging meta, something that we need to watch and make sure that that combination isn't too powerful.
What do you do when you do spot these things that are coming over the hill, as it were? How do you respond?
One of the really important things.
Well, it's really easy. What we do is we make it so you get one extra VP for every unit that you kill. That'll sort it right out. Zero problems with that process. We're gonna smash that. Like, that'll be perfect. Like, we've done it before.
Is to maintain a level of caution. So it's actually really easy to overinterpret data or overreact. So there's something in statistics called the margin of error, right? So effectively it boils down to the less data that we have, the less reliable that data is, right?
Sure.
Like, if we go back to our game of rock, paper, scissors, and we play 2 rounds, and I throw rock both times, and you happen to throw scissors both times.
Sure.
You could take the data from that and say, oh my goodness, rock has a 100% win rate. This is ridiculous. Rock, OP.
So OP.
Yeah, rock's really much too strong. So, that's why you have to have this scale of data. So while we can see emerging trends from local data or from very, very recent data, looking just at one weekend.
Sure.
If we were to jump on that too quickly, we might be overreacting to just one particularly good player that did well with a list, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what we tend to look at is a 60-day rolling window of global data to inform the broader decisions that we make. So, we'll get a...
Yeah, all right, okay, yeah. Like, it's not thrilling, but it's important. Like, there are so many people they have to explain this to. Listen to the beginning of the show. Like, they have the same colour scheme going on as you, Rob. No, this is red. Ours is blue on the right, and red on the left. I've only just noticed. Okay, let's ignore that. That's fine. All right, thank you. Never thought I'd hear Games Workshop talking about this.
The suspicion, we'll have a hypothesis of, maybe this combo is too powerful. Let's watch it. And then we'll, build reports specifically digging into that, but wait for that global data to come in to validate that was the correct
That
hypothesis.
makes sense, yeah. Okay, well, let's focus on Age of Sigmar then. What
I don't think anyone's personally insulting anyone in the video. Like, this video is pretty interesting. Not sure about the guy on the bottom right, though. It's fair.
Not at the moment. What have you been looking into? What can you tell us about what you've been looking at?
Yeah, so, one of the really interesting things in Age of Sigmar, of course, is that relative to other games, if you were to take chess or rock, paper, scissors, we already mentioned, Age of Sigmar is a highly asymmetrical game, right?
Yeah.
It's actually one of my favorite things about the game is the incredible variety of lists and rosters and factions that exist, right? You have everything from armies with a handful of mega gargants, huge hordes of zombies, literal gods on the battlefield, right? And so...
Zombie build is actually last year, Matt. Just FYI. We're doing Blood Knights now with Neferata, but that's fine. Continue.
What's really interesting there is trying to separate out player skill and, one player outplayed another player versus inherent imbalance between those asymmetrical armies, right? And that's really what we're trying to get at the heart of. We want it to be a fair and compelling, engaging experience for all players. And so we're always trying to fine-tune that asymmetry to make sure that it feels fair for both players.
Okay, so we've got this.
You lost a lot of casual players there, bro. Like, this was a lot. 5 minutes for casual bros was... They're not going through that. That's like, you just got us. You've got the people who are already in it. You lost them. Like, I don't think you got them. Like, I need Snappy. Like, what's this guy's name again? He's super nice. Can't remember his name right now. Like, he's bringing that energy, and like, we're getting the right information. Good speaker, but you're losing all the casual bros. We need punch early, right? You would never have the casuals. One day we'll have the casuals, right?
This data, man. We've got the graphs and other bits. Now you've got it. What's your goal with it? What do you do now? How do you make sure that factions are right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what we're looking at when we get all of this data in particular in regards to external balance, which is, one faction.
What's really exciting is I know that the two people in this video are watching this video because we know that they watch all of our stuff. So just a special shout out to you. Thanks for watching and being fans. It's kind of interesting knowing, like, we don't talk. Like, you're not allowed to talk to me. No one's allowed to talk to the Honest Wargamer from Games Workshop. But it's actually kind of sweet. Love you. Like, keep trying your hardest.
Faction's performance relative to another factions is to try to get all the factions within a 45 to 55% win rate.
Okay.
All right, so what I mean by win rate is very simply the number of games they win relative to the number of games they play.
Okay.
The reason that we target 45 to 55% is because of the margin of error that I referenced earlier. So, when we have a limited window of games and we want to keep it recent, so we only look at the last 60 days worth of games to make sure that we're adjusting to the meta right now. The factions that have...
Do you say 60-day rolling window, but the meta is... Like, isn't it 3 months? Isn't it like GHB, Battle Scroll, GHB? So I guess that they need time to, like... You can adjust on the fly, though, right? Like, it depends how... It doesn't matter. We could go into that later.
The least games played have about a 5% margin of error based on the number of games that we get, right? So we don't quite know, is this faction too strong, or did a few players just do well at...
Yeah, that's true. Listen, if you're going to rip off my color scheme, my profile, and everything I do... At least subscribe to the show. Come on, the pair of you. That seems at least fair.
Tournaments with them over the past 60 days, right? So because of that 5% margin of error, you can imagine if every faction were perfectly balanced, if this was a game of chess and white and black were actually not perfectly balanced, but close, that you would have a 50% win rate, right? So if everything was perfectly balanced, but we had a 5% margin of error, that would give us a 45 to 55% target.
That makes sense.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Matt Rose subscribed to him. Did you hear that?
That you would have a 50% win rate, right? So if everything was perfectly balanced, but we had a 5% margin of error, that would give us a 45 to 55% target.
Randy, they hire all sorts of people. I'll have you know, Randy. God, I just want to... where is the donation, like, in the case they wanted to... Anyway, like, we could talk about that a lot, but I've already said it in the pre-show, right? So, anyway.
That makes sense.
So that's what we aim for.
Excellent. Okay. And so what are we looking at right now? What's the studio looking at the moment?
Well, so, if we take a look at that...
We're watching the Honest Wargamer Age of Sigmar Stats
external win rate and the data, what the data shows. We have a few outliers. So we tend to look at those outliers and try to figure out, why is it that they're either over or underperforming. So an example of that is Sons of Behemoth. Sons of Behemoth have been performing quite well over the past months. They were actually pulled down in win rate by the Hunt, which is a limited battle scroll that we ran, gave an incentive for taking them down. But what we see in their data is that they actually don't...
again, like I said at the top of the show, and I've said through the show, this is great for us as a community. I've said it several times, multiple times. The roundup will also be that it's great for the community. I don't know at what point that's been missed where I haven't said that, right? But I'm also like, it's not like 0 or 1. I'm allowed to be like, this is good and there are issues, or that it's good and here are some things. Like, it's all, thank you very much, Tonsembu, right? Like, there we go.
Overperform in winning events.
Okay.
They really overperform in not losing. So it's very rare that they'll have an 0-5 result.
Okay.
And that's because of the mechanics of the army. They're really, really tough to kill.
Why is it an 0-5 result if you take in one-day event results? Like your methodology is always going to be based on 5-0s.
And they're really, really good at holding objectives unless you kill one.
Right.
So a lot of players will come in and just not be able to have the damage output to take down a Mega Gargant in a turn to stop them from holding that objective. So it's very rare that every single game they have, they'll lose, because usually a couple players they come up against just haven't adapted their list to be able to take down a Mega Gargant.
Sure. And you mentioned a 0-5 like as a term of winning. What does that really mean for these?
Yeah, so I mean, we track a lot of events. The two most common formats for tournaments are either a 3-game tournament or a 5-game tournament. Yeah. So when I refer to something going 0-5 or going 5-5, 5-0, sorry, it's the relative.
We do it all the time, bro. Like, it's so easy. The amount of times I've said someone's gone 4-0 and it's 4-1. The real tough one that's going to fuck you is 3 and a draw 1. It just, there's no good way to say it. There's no good way to say it. 3-1-1, 3 and a draw 1. Like, it hurts the brain to say, right? Remember, they are taking 1-game events. They are taking 1-game events. What? Rob, is that correct?
Amount of games that they won versus lost.
Yeah. So is it more from the kind of when the players play back to you how their games went when they went 0-5 or 5-0 or however these?
Thanks to Lewis Fitzgerald for joining Patreon. Yes, let's go. Anyone wants to join my Patreon, please feel free.
Results are going. Is that where you get the nitty gritty, the bits that you can really play with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So there's two terms called qualitative and quantitative data, right? So qualitative data is exactly that, is asking players, talking to players, and saying, oh, well, you know, why did this list do so well? Why is this so efficient? What's the key? And quantitative data is just looking at the stats and saying, okay, you know, we have hundreds and hundreds of games played. We can analyze that actually it's this combination of units within these rosters. So one of the things that we do is to fully parse all of the army rosters as well as part of these events. So we can see exactly what the lists were, what the units were, what the enhancements or strategies were. It's really important actually to strike the balance between those two kinds.
Okay, so this is really excellent. Okay, so like this is my favorite bit about the whole thing. And the bit that I'm actually... is that you, Lou Dog, in the chat? Thank you, Lewis, for joining Patreon. Anyone who wants to support the show, feel free. That's how you get your independent news and media from me. Also, spicy painting tutorials. This is my favorite bit. This is my favorite bit 100% of the way, because here they're like, we're talking to people about what these results mean. Because you could be like, oh, Mega Gargants are doing really well, and they might be like, we'll reduce their damage. And you're like, it's not the damage that's the issue, it's the survivability, it's what they do as counting on an objective. And then you're like, oh, that's great, because sure, the numbers will tell you why it's a thing. This is why I've always said the stats are really great, but you need someone who can interpret the stats well. I hope that I've done a good job, but I'm one of the few people out there that's been trying to. So it's a bit of being like the best in faction when you're the only person playing, right? So I've tried my hardest to do that. Might not have been perfect. Some people might not agree with some of my takes, right? But at the end of the day, thank you to Not Games Workshop for donating £4.20 to the show. This is Not Games Workshop thanking you for our job. Promise. As a surprise, they're always underpaying, even in a donation. So I appreciate that. So like, you know, ultimately, I think the fact that they have other people analyzing the data, and hopefully it's a bunch of like switched on tournament gamers without any particular biases. This is one of the things that we've seen from the playtesting process. They've had many playtesters who've been biased. They've been buying, like, we've seen no nerfs. There was a very famous time when I described the Daughters of Cain being far too good. And then we saw no nerfs to the Daughters of Cain during a winter FAQ, and then we saw some of the head playtesters all painting their Daughters of Cain army for an upcoming large event. When you have that sort of nepotism and internal sort of disregard for a fair playing field. There's also a great question that you would hope that none of these people who are advising on this stuff are going to be in Age of Sigmar Worlds teams next year. Otherwise, they'll have up to a 3-month advantage over other teams around the world, which again is preposterous and something that I would definitely be I would advocate for that not being the case, because if you are discussing stats, you're discussing a fair playing field, then you actually want your competitive environment to be a fair playing field. Like you want that. You want people divested from their own ego of winning events or their nation's ego of winning events or whatever that is. And sure, insert playtesting isn't an advantage meme right here, right? Now, the best argument you made was the Frostart Phoenix got a buff, and that was because Byro Boy bought 4. It's true. The Frostart Phoenix at 315 is insane. Like, how that hasn't changed in points, but it doesn't matter. How do you create a hiring policy that removes bias from humans, though? I'm not asking for 100% removal, right? That's not the point. You can just be transparent, right? The very best thing that they could do is they could just pay people. They could just directly pay people, and then they could just be like, these people are on our payroll as people who test this and test that, right? There we go. And then you just, you can just put asterisks next to their names, right? You could say, sure, like this season in your nation, you're not going to be part of the rotation for the season, and they're going to rotate you in and rotate you out. Like, I mean, ultimately, a lot of these people probably, like the people who they're talking to about this information, won't be getting paid. Maybe they'll get some free app codes for the codexes. it would be great if the multi-million-pound profit-making company could actually pay these people. That would be a better process, and again would create more clarity, which I think would be more healthy. Again, always more upfront clarity is better for us as a community, which is always what I say. It's not like when the USA team... Yeah, like the 40k US team was famously... So for 40k in the WTC, the USA team was famously made up of a bunch of 40k playtesters and also their head of events over in the USA. And then this just caused a massive stink behind the scenes. And eventually all those people kind of got removed because, like, the rest of the community were like, bro, you're literally giving all the information months ahead of time to these people so that they have a significant advantage. Like, it's just like and then the organization, be it AOS Worlds, be it WTC, they can't seriously take themselves seriously as an organization if they allow that level of corruption to exist, right? It's just not true. Or they can let it happen, and I'm going to talk about it on the show. Like, that's how it works, right? That's why I'm here, right? No gods, no masters. Right, but we'll continue.
Kinds of data. We gather all this data from events around the world. We look at that, build our hypotheses, try to figure out, okay, I think this is the problem. But then it's important to validate that with a human element.
Sure.
So we've actually built a group called the MetaWatch Advisors Group that's made up of...
The MetaWatch Advisors Group? Oh, hello. Who's it made up of? Let's go.
Really experienced tournament organizers, influencers from throughout the community that keep a really, really close eye and talk to the players all around the world. We make sure.
Wonder who that is. Wonder. It's not me. I can categorically say it isn't me, right? But I assume all those people watch the show. And my shout out to all of you. My love from me to you. Okay, right? I will continue to do my job so that you can do your job advising them better. And of course, all these people probably are like brilliant people who are great in their hobby and at tournaments and in their communities. And my love to all of you, of course. Right, that's important. Influencers do give me a bit of bad vibes. It's true, but none of those people are me, and that's important to note. Like so, and you would like. I guess they watch the show anyway. They don't need to ask me. They watch me listen to talk about it all the time, right? Anyway,
that keep a really, really close eye and talk to the players all around the world. We make sure to run the changes that we want to make by them, get their feedback, make sure that this is aligning with that kind of human perspective of what we're seeing at these events.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of it can be, like you say, somebody finds a specific thing that they're responding to. And I'm guessing that can throw out quite a lot of the other things as well. If one army starts reacting in a particular way, other forces, other factions might...
What I also like is I love the idea that like we get away from the idea of like fucking the magic source of a list. Like it's such an old adage, and of course it was true in the past where there was just the broken list. I burned the bridge, hid the materials to rebuild, and regret nothing. Lol. The hot Sues, I love you forever, never change, never forgive. Right, Rob? Can you tell them to give acolytes 2 attacks in melee and let them be wizards? They're already wizards. No, yeah, acolytes are wizards. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Carrick acolytes are wizards. But 2 attacks in melee. I'm sure they got. Not sure.
Start building differently to cope with that, and then win in a different way, maybe before.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting and what we learn from that is also the combination of player skill and faction balance. So some factions can be very powerful, but have a really high skill requirement to extract that from it.
Sure.
Seraphon.
And so sometimes what you see the kind of higher level players moving to a faction that they see an opportunity in, and especially something that can counter the meta, something that can be surprising or unexpected to their opponents.
Yeah.
And then when they do well, other people will come in, but maybe not know how to pilot it quite as well. So that can kind of...
Pilot what, Matt? Say net list. Pilot what, Matt? Pilot what, Matt?
wreak havoc with the win rate and the trends.
Yeah, how the curve's going.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for that. What?
Again, to the chat Airborne Scientist, non-subscriber. Don't know why I'm explaining myself to you, but here we go. I've said this is a huge positive, right? This is we're watching it, we're taking it on board, we're discussing it, and we're analysing it. That's great. Okay? That's what we're doing. Wait a minute, are those fake hands? They're not fake hands!
What can we expect from MetaWatch, as it were, in the future?
So we have quarterly Battle Scroll balance updates, and those are really where we try to put what we've learned by analyzing this data into action, into practice, and make tweaks and adjustments to the game to try to get that external win rate within our targets across every faction in the game. The next, horizon really for us, as we are getting closer to our goals for external balance, is to shift our focus and shift our lens onto something called internal balance. Okay. So internal balance is within a faction. How many of the...
Okay, let me tell you where I'm at. Gluttons. That's all I'm at. Gluttons. If they put gluttons, if it's Battletome Stonehorn, and if them motherfucking gluttons, right, aren't right next to that, like, see, this is one of the interesting things, actually. I've been thinking about this a lot last night. Like, they don't have internal language. And again, chat, Matt and everyone else from Games Workshop, I assume you're watching. So some things that I think that you should do, yeah, my little tips from me to you is, like, as someone who reviews stuff all the time, yeah, is you really need to start talking stuff, like, and you need to start talking to the designers. You need to start talking to them about unit roles. Yeah, you need to really identify how different armies have different unit roles, and even though you've got 3 melee options, let's say in the Ogre's book, your Gluttons can be an anvil unit, and your not lead belchers, your Iron Guts can be your more hammer unit, and then you can, and then if you wanted your Man-Eaters, which I'm not sure if they'll be in the book, I think they are in the book, your Man-Eaters could do like some special utility stuff, right? And in that, you've got different unit roles. So sure, you've got ogres with melee weapons, but instead of just giving them different melee profiles, you really orientate what the unit is meant to do inside of a book. So you specify, because I think that's one of the things that they struggle with so much. They don't really have a difference in, like, they don't have a way of identifying how unit X should be different to unit Y. And they really need to start really creating that for themselves. So that, and then feeding that back to the designers. Like, not just like, we need to give it +1 attack. It's such poor language. Like, you should have a goal for what the unit should be trying to achieve on the tabletop. It also fits in so well with the narrative. Like, if you can, like, combine those, because then you can rewrite the narrative a little bit and be like, gluttons steadfast in their ability to hold the line against the enemy forces. Like, and then they've got rules that they just, like, they hold the line, right? Because then you've got, like, books that are missing unit roles, and you can really start to, like, expand and extrapolate and be like, oh, actually, we really like that unit role that we created for that army, and we're going to integrate it into this army, but maybe in a slightly different way, right? Rob, the value for internal balance is way off. If one unit of gluttons is used in one list, in 20 lists, then they are okay. Like, maybe. Look at Rob's assuming these guys don't know what unit roles are. Like, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, Brew, bring the other guys back. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, you must. The best invoice for this business consultation. They can have it for free. Yeah, Soulblight Gravelords miss nothing. Definitely nothing. Absolutely everything. Range of combat accounted for. Maybe a little bit of shooting wouldn't be bad. Faux Parfo, thanks for subscribing. Also, Bearded Wonder, Vigorul TV, a bunch of people. Can you explain rock, paper, scissors? Okay, so imagine you've got rock. Yeah, this is right. Paper and scissors. Yeah, but then you also add dragon, lizard, and spark, and then you just have more. You understand what they are, all right? For the first time, so many abilities, auras give just +1 on rolls, and hit something along those lines. It's so boring. It is boring. You're right. Yeah. You're right, it is boring, and this is really exciting for them because they're very close. Like, when they start to go through this design methodology, they can go back to the designers and they can be like, okay, like, this Fulminate unit is, like, because you just don't want a 1-for-1 comparison. You don't want Fulminators concussors to just have the same output and the same profile. Or maybe you do, so you just choose the coolest miniature that you like. But what you really want is them to have slightly different roles, different purposes. I still like the idea of, like, monster hunter units. Like, this unit gets a bonus against monsters. I'm like, oh, there aren't many monsters around at the minute. You're like, well, okay, that's really fun. Like, so if you have a unit that's good against monsters, a unit that's good against infantry, and then units that get good against everything, the unit that's good against everything is always the unit that's going to get chosen, right? Because it's just more effective, because it's always useful in every case. But if you can make those two cheaper, for example, and then make that one a little bit more expensive, so you're like, oh, I'm paying for the utility of being good against everything, yeah. Or you just, like, it's just a really fun way of the whole thing being, like, working, which would be great. Those are clearly fake hands. They are not fake hands. Thirsty B, thank you for subscribing. Favorite bottom rules where the abilities reflect the character of the model. Yeah, like, anyway.
The different war scrolls get run at competitive events, right? Sure. How many options do people have to build a fun and wide variety of army rosters? And so, we have a lot of that data as well in terms of war scroll use and percentage inclusion, win rates per war scroll. So, which war scrolls are in the lists that have a high win rate. And that allows us to start to look towards...
That's super interesting, because then they're like, okay, Nurgle's winning lots, but actually the lists that are always winning are the Puskor Blightlords lists. So those are a little more effective. It allows them to choose outliers. Like, it lets them identify the problem units quicker, well, not quicker, but, like, lets them identify the problem units.
Making either points changes or efficiency changes within each battle tome. To try to improve the internal balance as well.
You're really getting down to the granular at that stage.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's important not to try to do both at the same time, because if you make too many changes, any good scientist will tell you, it's effectively an experiment and you're trying to validate your hypothesis.
This is the other bit that actually becomes really interesting as well. So, there's also all of this conversation while also the release of several battle tomes inside of that mix. And as we know, those battle tomes significantly change the meta anyway. So I do wonder if these 3-month cycles, these 60-day rolling cycles, but the 3-month updates, while they might be able to bring up units that are weak, I do wonder about their veracity and understanding that they might accidentally put something like too strong inside of the meta without really understanding how it works, like we just saw with Leagues of Votann. And again, this is not really their issue, as in Matt and the group trying to make sure that the game is produced better, but it's really on Games Workshop's like profit margin issue in that they don't put digital rules out and instead it's a printed book. So because if they were going to sell us the digital Ogre Mortri's book in a few months or month or whenever it is, then in that case they could be like, actually, based on this current stuff that we're currently talking about, we're going to adjust some of those points. Like, even the evening before, it could be part of a rolling conversation, but we already know that whatever conversation they're having about the state of the game right now, like, because we know that the Zinch book, which just got released this week, was meant to be out in July, which means it would have been in line with being able to control people's endless spells when Purple Sun was auto-slay stuff on a 1. Those things were meant to happen at the same time, right? But we already know now that Purple Sun got nerfed, and that Zinch now's ability to control endless spells is a little bit reduced. Yeah, like, because actually I can't control your Purple Sun as well, right? But so, like, they're going to be fighting their own system. And again, the reason that I love all of this is because, like, it's kind of like, it either just falls apart, which, like, is, like, could be a thing. But the other thing is that it's a systematic change. That, like, it's kind of like the pebble in the river that eventually changes the shape of how the river moves. And I really hope that that's the case. Like, I'm going to be a big advocate for this, yeah, in loads of ways, because I hope what it does is it changes the shape of that river significantly, and then you cycle this up to us as consumers getting a better product, which is great, right? Like, even though the product's already great.
If you make too many changes at the same time, it becomes really, really tough to extract which of those changes actually made the difference.
You've lost your control. You've lost
exactly
your base.
Yeah. You have nothing to measure of, okay, were we able to bring down the average win rate of Maggotkin of Nurgle, which is a little bit over the curve right now, based on the changes we're looking to make. Yeah. We can measure that and say, okay, was that effective? And then once that's in a healthier place, we can start to move on to kind of the next order of changes.
So what's the state of play right now?
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about looking at the data that's coming in is taking a look at recently released battle tomes and how they're slotting into the meta. If we look at Sylvaneth or Skaven, Nighthaunt, recent 3rd edition battle tomes, what's really, really exciting is that we're seeing them come in right on target, right in the middle of the pack, that 48 to 52% win rate.
The sweet spot.
The sweet spot.
We nailed it. We've seen that the game is perfect and we nailed it. Like, and to be fair to them, they've not done terrible. I don't think they've done terrible. No, that's fine.
That we're looking at. And we're also seeing a huge surge in games played for those factions, which is really, really great to see. Tons of excitement. We know that there's a few factions that are underperforming. Gloomspite Gits and Cruel Boys.
Right, okay, now this is the bit that's exciting, right? Because I have no idea, like, what the changes are going to make are, right? But, like, my God, the stonks market right now, because Cruel Boys are available for literally pennies on eBay. The stonk markets is massive, right? Yeah, this is important. Yeah, we could be in a stonk meta, okay? This is going to be huge. It's going to be, if you don't 3D print your armies, like, which I probably always will do. But, like, other than that, like, we're in a huge meta, like, for stonks, which I'm so excited about. The stonk market is going to change, right? Exactly, listen to these guys. Exactly, these guys are going to decide the stonks. We need deep dive stonk analysis of these guys, right? Gets fixed, +1 bravery bubble. The thing is, Pete, I think that they've spoken to people, and I think that it's going to be better than that. I really do. By the dip, let's go. Diamond hands. Hopefully look at the power level of winning army and those armies defeated. If I play against Gits a lot, my army will appear to have a high win rate, but my army may not be the problem. It's just that I've been playing Gits. I don't think, yeah, I understand that, Eddie Brooks. There's enough data out there, though, like, that you can, like, self-identify. Like, you can identify. If you've watched every Monday show, which they clearly have, like, you can very quickly identify what the issues are in the list, right?
Definitely more love coming their way in the upcoming Battle Scroll. Cool. And then there's a few factions that we're really keeping our eye on that are overperforming a bit right now. So we've got Maggotkin of Nurgle, in particular Puskoil Blight.
Get fucked, flies! Oh, you are in the bin. Get fucked. Sell them immediately. There's got to be a local noob who doesn't know anything about this game. Sell those flies right now. You are getting tanked. Get in the bin. right?
Light Lords and the Drowned Men subfaction have been doing really well. Sons of Behemoth. And then we've got Beasts of Chaos with a couple of really efficient War Scrolls combined with that Herdstone in the late game. Is proving to be a really potent combo.
It's Rally. Just say it's Rally. It's Rally is the problem. Rally is the problem. That's all it is.
Especially in the hands of a skilled player.
Yeah.
Seraphon are a really interesting case. They
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
have been on the kind of upper end of the standings for quite a while, and they
How have they? How have they? You haven't put any other standings out. Where have you seen those standings, Matt? Please tell us.
are coming down a little bit. It looks like some of the changes that we made to Thunder Lizard helped rein in their power, but now we're seeing players start to shift, and we're keeping our eye on Fangs of
Absolutely not true.
Sotek, which appears to be on the rise.
It's a heck of a job.
Oh no. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh no, this is a disaster. This is a disaster. Oh no. Anyway. Stonks alert. Sell. Sell Skinks. Sell Skinks by Saurus Knights.
Matt, there's a
Yes.
lot to do. You've
It's
got
so much fun.
that's huge on the external level and huge even on the internal level as well from what you're talking about. But
Yeah. No, it's great fun, and I think what's really rewarding about it is seeing the positive feedback from the community to things like the Battle Scroll updates, and ultimately seeing the new data come in and get closer to the goals that we're trying to achieve.
As much as anything else, it's very reassuring you're getting this massive volume of data. It shows that people are playing these games and absolutely loving it.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's incredible seeing the amount of events from all over the world. I love digging into strange local metas and different communities around the world, really zooming in and seeing what's different in different places around the world. So yeah, it's fascinating.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
And that's about all for us here at MetaWatch. Remember to stay up to date with all things Warhammer on warhammercommunity.com. Thanks again.
Okay, so loads of things to talk about. First thing, can't wait to see the 40k version of this, right? I assume that next week is identical a 40k version. If they only do an Age of Sigmar version every Monday, right? The fucking memes are 11 out of 10, right? That's what I'm gonna say, because that's the funniest thing I could have ever heard. Like, they're literally like, just rip off Rob and stay there. Anyway, right, so let's talk about some stuff, right? Reading between the lines, 40k one on Thursdays. Have they said that, Jog? Is that 100% true? Oh, yeah, on Thursdays, because we do Thursdays. You fucking got me, right? Right, okay, so let's talk about some of the information. Number one, this is great for a variety of reasons, but like probably the chief reason is they've given there's a term, there's a phrase, they've given themselves the rope to hang themselves, and that's great because they've put themselves in a situation now where we benefit one of two ways. We either benefit because the whole game gets better because they actually look at this stuff, enact it, and do positive actual changes, or they don't and we get massive memes, right? And massive memes are fantastic, right? Like, because what else are we here to do but have fun? It's a hobby, right? It's meant to be fun, and like that's where I'm at now as a person. Like, hobbies are fun, yeah, the game is fun, like, let's just have fun, right? But you're gonna do stuff like without like correct communication, you're gonna have people like Gavin as a good example. Gavin, one of the best Age of Sigmar players last year, putting out screaming into the void here, but everyone who plays competitively is collectively laughing at games which MetaWatch take of Thunder Lizard are balanced and Fangs of Sotak need to look at. My current record of 26-1 with Thunder Lizard could use some improvements, I suppose. But then again, that's also Gavin, who's got a very high level of skill expression, right? So you're in a really interesting place, okay, where actually, is Gavin just very good? No, Thunder Lizard is really good. Like, there's people who can't play and people who can play. Again, which is why I would only really take data from Sunday events. That's who I am as a person. I was like, I don't want to see all the other people play. I just want to see the good people play all the time, because that's fun, right? Gavin is 251 to 2 with the army. That's pretty good. Right, okay. So ultimately, it's great stuff, right? It's great stuff, especially the fact that they've got a community, they've got an outreach group who they communicate with to actually analyze the data and discuss the data, because that's really important, because they don't necessarily, they're going to make their own decisions, very much like I do when I do the stats show on a Monday. I'm going to be like, the reasons that this is doing well is because of this, yeah? And that's always partisan. That's always just my decisions, right? That's what I think, right? Being able to talk to a group, you at least hear some other opinions, and hopefully they take those opinions on board, right? Because those opinions are more likely to be right, probably, than the Thunder Lizard isn't good take, to be honest. Generally don't miss 5.0 lists get piloted by people with rather generally don't most 5.0 lists get piloted by people with rather good skill expression. Yeah, Ronya, that's right. I agree with that absolutely. Most 5.0 lists do generally get piloted, but we have had times in recent memory, like if you remember Mega Gargants last year, where they were like 10% of the meta, but they had like a 60 to 8% win rate. So it was just pretty much everyone. That's why my favorite stat still that we do on the Honest Wargamer stats is the positive win rate potential. I think that gives a kind of like a little bit more of like a clear indication, especially versus like. Let me just go show you what I'm talking about. Especially, so it's positive win rate potential, especially when you look at the faction meta representation that you have here, right, on the left-hand side. So that gives you a representation. So Stormcast are the most played army, 9%, right? But they have a positive win rate potential of 39%. So that really gives you like an idea of like across all of the different skill levels, the ability. So what you do is you do this and you divide it by 5 O's. You effectively look at this information, and then you look at 5 O's, and you see how many Storm Catalysts have gone 5-0 and what they look like. Then that gives you a good indication of an army. And then if we look at Sylvaneth have the second highest meta representation, but their positive win rate potential is 51%. So you may be likely to go 3-2 with these guys, yeah, versus not. That tells me that Sylvaneth actually are a little bit good in some places because everyone of every skill level is playing, but 51% is fine. Like, it's bang on the money, pretty much. So actually, that faction's in a very, very good place. Where you have so Nurgle, no, not Nurgle. So Seraphon are a good example. So where is Seraphon now? Where are Seraphon? So yeah, Seraphon are like at the same level of Nurgle, but if you look, their positive win rate potential is 69%. So again, Nurgle 57, Seraphon 59, right? With Skaven, even more popular, but they got a 46% positive win rate potential. What that really tells me is everyone of every skill level is playing Skaven about the same amount as Seraphon, but there's a 20 percentage point difference in your ability to go between 2-3 and 3-2, right? So to get more wins than losses. That's always been my way of really recognizing if there's a significant problem with the army, because what you're really discussing there is representation. Like, it becomes really difficult when you get down to like Blades of Khorne, right? Because you're like, not really many people are playing, but like it gives you a really clear indication that either Seraphon's too good, which I would argue it is, versus Skaven, who aren't quite good enough. Because so if you're like the best Skaven player in the world, you can only do so well. But if you are like the best Seraphon players and also average Seraphon players, you still got a positive win rate potential of 70%, right? This is gold. Thanks. Well, that's why I always discussed it. And again, I've been doing this for 4 years. So there's like a lot of lessons that hopefully the Games Workshop people will learn from people like me or the Falcon who've been doing this full time, because we've been able to like look at this data time and time again and go back to people like Rob and Ziggy and LLV and just be able to say, look, I would really like it if we could pass this other data, because that's actually, I think, a better way of understanding what's going on in the game, right? So yeah, it's just 5% up, 5% down. Seraphon, that's true. If we just add 5%, take 5% away, then everything's fine, right? Then that's fine. Ultimately, it's great. Okay, ultimately it's great. I really do believe that. Like, that's from the bottom of my heart. It's great. It's good that they're doing something. It's good. Like, I mean, it's great. Like, it's good. I like even the fact that they're absolutely just ripping off my Monday show is like, I give a fuck. Like, it's good. Like, it's really good. It's good because, like, the company have to abide by what they do, or the thing falls apart. The worst thing is the thing falls apart. That's the worst thing. The best thing is that we get a better game system, which is already a great game system, right? Like, you can't do the Tuesday show next Games Workshop. I mean, that sticks in my craw a little bit. That does stick in my craw a little bit. That's a fair point. Like, to say that, like, a multi-billion-pound corporation steal our stats and then steal the format for a show, but it's a compliment, I guess. I'm not going to stop doing the show because, I mean, I'll probably do it better. I mean, that's the easy answer. And then, yeah, like, fun. So, like, that's where we're at now in the game, and with that stuff. And I hope that's come across as, like, positive or balanced is probably the correct way that I want to describe that, because I've been really upfront with saying that, like, I think it's a really positive step for them as a company and for us as a game system and as a community. The stats were never my stats. They were produced by other people. They were fronted by me. They were the community stats. They were for the community so the community could get better, and the community's got into a progressively better place over time. And I've got to say that I feel like we've had some part in it. That's me. That's everyone who's ever subscribed to the show. That's everyone who's ever supported the show. I feel like we've made that push better. And I'm really proud of that. Like, I think that's something really good. Like, you know, like, it's only ever upwards for us as a community, in my opinion. So, like, yeah, I'm super happy, which is good. But anyway, my love to everyone in the chat. Thanks for listening. If you watch this YouTube or podcast, blah, 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 please like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah.